All right, guys. For today's work, it's pretty much the same thing as yesterday. The same thing. Well, all I'm doing is giving you a triangle, a right triangle. I'm giving you guys a corner angle, well, this angle right here, and one side, and you're supposed to find the other side. So having that said, I know the biggest side on the right triangle. The biggest side is the hypotenuse. So we know we have the hypotenuse. We're dealing with the hypotenuse from 51 degrees. I'm also dealing with the opposite. I'm not going to write adjacent here because we don't have anything for the adjacent. So we're going to be dealing with opposite and hypotenuse. From SOHCAHTOA, I know we're dealing with SO because that's the only one that has O and H. So that what that stands for is sine of 51 degrees, right? Sine of the angle, sine of 51 is equal to, I know sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so I'm going to go 12 over x. If the x was on top, the 12 was at the bottom, multiply both sides by 12 and you got your x. If the x was on top. Since the x is at the bottom, let me switch it with the sign. Sine of 51 and x, they're going to switch places. Hold on, I'm waiting on this thing. It just froze for a minute. Okay. X is going to be 12 over sine of 51 degrees. Like I said, if the x is at the bottom, just switch it with sine of 51. So I have x equals 12 over sine of 51. That is 12 over, I know sine of 51 is a decimal. All right, we're going to use a little table to find what sine of 51 is. So 51, look for sine, and we get 0.7771. On 51 degrees. You see how there's three numbers? The first number is sine, the second one cosine, and the third one sine. On 51 degrees, the first number, that's your sine. You see it? Yeah? And then just divide. 12 divided by that decimal. And round it to the nearest tenth, which means one decimal place. I'm going to use this. So you guys should have about 15.4. So that's your answer. X equals 15.4. Once again, the way we got the 15.4, I just went 12 divided by 0.7771 and rounded to the nearest tenth, which is one decimal place. That's it. Mm-hmm. You basically solve for that side. So given a right triangle, besides 90, having another angle here, so given this angle and given one side, you should find a second side. Technically, you can find any side because if I wanted this side instead of using and not giving you this, so opposite and adjacent, then I will use a tangent. So technically, you can find any side you want. But I'm going to tell you guys which one to find, right, with the next. Let's take a look at question number 2. We know the big side is hypotenuse. From 52 degrees, the one side that is farthest away is the opposite. So I'm dealing with O and H again. So this time I'm dealing again with sine. Right? Because sine is the only one that has O and H. So sine of 52 degrees. I know sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So I go x over 14. Notice how the x is on top now. Like I said, sometimes the x will be on top, sometimes the x will be at the bottom. Multiply both sides by 14. So x equals 14 times sine of 52. So let me see, 14. Sine of 52 is a decimal. All right, let me use my list for that one. Sine of 52 is 0.7880. 0.7880. That's x. Then just multiply. Right, the 0.7880, I got it from the list. Then just multiply 14 times that decimal, round it to the nearest tenth, and you guys should get 11.0. So when the x is on top, like our case, notice how we ended multiplying. When the x was at the bottom, like in question number 1, we ended dividing. So some you will multiply, some you will divide. I know my both of my examples, 1 and 2, were sine. Some of them you guys will deal with cosine, some others you guys will deal with tangent, depending on the two sides that you have. If I give you guys adjacent and hypotenuse, then you're dealing with cosine, because you're dealing with cos. And if I give you guys opposite and adjacent, then you guys are dealing with tangent. I'm giving you guys TOA. So depending on which two sides you're given, you guys will either use sine, cosine, or tangent. Right. Any questions? 0.7880. Look at your list. Look for sine of 52 degrees. See it? Okay. Let me do one more. Looking at question number 3. From 57, I know x is the opposite, and I know 11 is the adjacent. Notice how I didn't mark the hypotenuse, because we don't have anything for the hypotenuse. So now O and A, I know from SOHCAHTOA I'm dealing with TOA. So what that stands for is tangent of 57 is equal to x over 11. Right, tangent is opposite over adjacent, so x over 11. To get that x by itself, let me multiply both sides by 11. So I have 11 times tangent of 57. Let me go back to my chart again. And on 57, look for tangent. That is 1.5399. 1.5399. So let's just multiply those two. 11 times that decimal. When you guys round it to nearest tenth, you guys should get 16.9. Like round it to the nearest tenth. Notice I used tangent because you guys had opposite and adjacent. All right. Any questions? The reason why I'm giving you guys basically the same homework 2 days in a row, the reason why I do that is because tomorrow we have a project. We're going to go out there and measure the height of something. Right? Let's say that's the ground. Let's say that's one of you guys. And let's say you guys are measuring something like that. If you look straight, that's 0 degrees. Right? If you're looking straight, that's 0 degrees. But if you look up to the top of the item, whatever you guys are measuring, you guys have an angle. So there's an angle. And tomorrow we're going to use clinometers, homemade clinometers, to go and measure the angle. Right? Clinometers, you guys probably have seen them during construction. Like in construction, they use them a lot. They do a little tripod on the floor, and they have a little thing where they look through, and then that measures angles. And it's called clinometer. But for one of those, you're looking at about $1,000 for each. I'm going to need about 10 clinometers, and I'm not going to go spend $10,000 for us to use it one day. Right? So no, I'm not gonna buy those fancy clinometers. So I'm gonna make one using protractors. Protractors are string and a little knot for weight. So I'm gonna spend a little less than $5 for the 10 clinometers instead of $10,000 plus tax. So like I said, I'm gonna give you guys a cheap one, but that way I'm gonna show you guys. You guys will see how I created it. You can make one. You can make your own clinometers. You can measure that angle. Technically, you guys will have an angle. You can find the distance from you to the building, tree, or whatever it is that you're measuring. And if you notice, it creates a triangle. Given an angle, given one side, you should be able to find another side. If you notice, that's what we're doing right now. That's exactly what we're doing. So that's why I have you guys do it twice in a week. From that, I know it only measures part of the height, because we're missing this much. Right, if you notice, gives you guys part of the height. I'll show you tomorrow. I'll tell you guys how to find the missing part, and you should be able to find the height. It's a project, so I expect it to be correct, or I'll give it back. You guys, your teams will be up to 4 people. And I recommend at least two. I know some of you guys like to work alone, but I recommend at least two. Because when you guys are using your clinometers, you guys will need help reading the clinometer. So at least two people per group. All right, thank you. All right. Any questions for today? Let me take over really quick.